Well, if Mia Goth wasn't already the object of my darkest affections, woo! What is up, guys, and welcome to my long-awaited review for Infinity Pool. I have been trying to get this review done for almost a week, but it seems like everything short of the sky falling has prevented me from getting it done. But today is the day. So I saw this movie last week on opening night at a theater about an hour away from here that I go to once in a while. Tend to have the more independent releases, and so I enjoy going there. And Infinity Pool is the newest film by Brandon Cronenberg. Yes, the son of the wildly acclaimed director from especially the 80s, David Cronenberg. And he kind of really jumped onto the scene with his film, I think it was actually his second film, Possessor, from a couple of years ago. Got a lot of attention for that, especially in the film festival circuits. And as somebody that I appreciated Possessor, I think that there was some interesting things about it. I actually really enjoyed seeing how much influence he had gotten from his father, clearly. It wasn't a movie that I would ever see myself rewatching again, but I was very intrigued with his talent behind the camera and seeing where he was going to go next. And I walked into this movie 100% blind. I did not watch a trailer. I didn't read any plot synopsis. I tend to do that more times than not nowadays, and it tends to reward me more times than not. So all I knew about this was the cast and Brandon Cronenberg. And whoa, this was a journey. So I'll give a little plot synopsis to give you an idea of what this movie is about. If you don't want to know anything and walk in blind the way that I did, just skip forward until you see the little positives marker in the lower left-hand corner. But the plot of this is essentially where you have Alexander Skarsgård and his wife. They are a very wealthy couple that are off in this tropical paradise vacation spot, and very clearly it establishes them early on as one of those people that just, they're so rich that they don't have any value in anything. They're kind of like bored in this situation that most of us average people would kill to experience. And quickly they get introduced to this other couple, Mia Goth and some other dude. Mia Goth's the one that we care about, let's be honest. And they start to kind of pull the crazy side out of them a little bit. Start to party with them, start to pull a little bit more the riskier side out of Alexander Skarsgård and his wife. And in the middle of their first night together on the drunken drive home, he accidentally hits somebody and kills them, and are told by Mia Goth and her male counterpart, don't say anything. This country's really fucked up. There's a lot of really weird rules. Let us take care of it. Go home. And so the very next day, the authorities from this fictional foreign land come in. They take Alexander Skarsgård. They put him in prison, and they present him with a choice. You have killed one of our own. The penalty for that is death. But if you have enough money, which he does, you can pay for us to create a clone of you, and the clone can undergo the death penalty while you watch as an alternative punishment for your crime. And that is kind of the base setup of the crazy concept of this movie, is that there is not only the technology, but the infrastructure and the law that you can have a clone created to take the fall for all of your crimes. And then from then on forth, sets a series of events to where you have these rich people that now know that they don't have to take the fall for anything that they do, and they go on a series of progressively weirder and intensified crimes in this foreign land because they can just have somebody else do the death penalty for them. Now, starting off with the positives for Infinity Pool, I think that that was a really great sci-fi horror-ish concept to come to with this film, and that's something that Brandon Cronenberg is easily going to be known for, just alongside his father. You know, Possessor was a really trippy concept there that kind of bent sci-fi into horror. Same thing here. And I really enjoyed that. Once I got to the section of the movie where that's revealed, and I went, oh, that's what this is about? That's pretty fucking cool. And I enjoyed the way that he explored it in many different ways, both narratively and visually. And so as somebody that loves horror, that loves sci-fi, when you have somebody that can produce these really dark, plausible concepts that don't seem that far out of what we consider reality and execute them the way that he has done now 2 films in a row that I've seen, that's really an enjoyable experience. And compounding that, I really like the commentary that this movie is given. I like the themes that it explores. I like the things that it's trying to say, trying to give a commentary on the accountability of the rich and the wealthy and the elite in the country, and how it doesn't really seem like they have to take the fall for anything that they do, and they kind of laugh at law and order, where the rest of us are petrified to ever get thrown into a jail cell for something that we can't buy our way out of. And it also kind of gives a commentary as well, which I actually enjoyed kind of exploring and talking about even more, which is what truly guides our decisions. Is it a moral compass? Is it this inherent understanding of right and wrong and good and bad? Or is it simply the fear of the ramifications of what would happen if you do decide to do the things you actually want to do? And this movie presents a scenario to where that darker side of people start to come out, to where they know, I can go and kill people, I can go and rob places, I can vandalize things, I can be an absolute asshole to everybody around me, and it doesn't really matter, because even if the hammer does come down, I'm not the one that's going to get hurt by it. And that's a really interesting conversation to have. And I think if people are honest, you will get different answers out of every single person. I think some of us genuinely do value right and wrong, and do value the fact that we don't want to harm our fellow man or take things that we have not earned. And then I do think that there's plenty of other people, maybe even more of us, that really don't give a fuck about any of that. We just don't want to go to jail. And the way that it explores that through this group of people that Skarsgård has now integrated himself with Mia Goth being kind of the figurehead of them, and showing how each of them react to that differently, to where some of them, that is their vacation. That is their escape from everyday life, is going to this little world with this technology and this law in place, and they get to do whatever the fuck they want for a little bit and then go home to their everyday, boring, mundane lives filled with money and riches. And then you get somebody like Alexander Skarsgård, who is the protagonist in the movie, that tends to go both. He's very intrigued, and he's enamored, and he's seduced by this lifestyle. And at the same time, once it goes past a certain point, he's horrified by it, and he's sickened by it. And that constant pull and tug in both directions is explored really well in the movie. As far as performances across the board, they're outstanding. Alexander Skarsgård is one of the most interesting actors working today, because he has done something wildly different every single time that I have seen him. I think he kind of came to fame in True Blood, which I've never seen, but you have that very melodramatic vampire werewolf type show. I saw him as the villain in the Straw Dogs remake, which is highly underrated in my opinion, and he was a really interesting villain in that one. Then you have something like last year's The Northman, to where he's this Viking, this brute. And then you get this to where he is very much, what do you call a beta male? He is an absolute puss. He's a guy who does not take control of his life whatsoever, and is just a puppet on a string, a dog on a leash, quite literally, in this movie. And so the way that he can go and transform into all these different characters just is a total testament to how good of an actor he really is. And he's one of those guys that I'll always have my eye on to see what wildly different thing he's going to do next. And then, of course, you have the newly appointed goddess of horror, Mia Goth, and she is just as good in this as she was in X and Pearl. I mean, I think this is a girl that just, the last couple projects she has taken, she's like, it's time to make my fucking stamp. I'm tired of dicking around. I will not accept a life I don't deserve. Kudos if you understand that reference. But Mia Goth is so damn good in this, because all throughout the movie, she's like seducing you as a viewer. Like, Alexander Skarsgård is the character you're experiencing all this through, but in a way, she's kind of bringing you in as the viewer. She's the one who's kind of like the one holding the poison apple, saying, come on, take a bite. And I really think that all the different layers of her performance, both the seductive side to the alluring side to the psychotic side, is absolutely top notch. And you needed somebody with that powerhouse performance to have that role, because it just goes into some wild, wild directions, all the way down to the nipple-sucking end. And finally, I did appreciate a lot of the visuals in this too. It's a very visually trippy movie. There's a bit of a psychedelic flavor to it. There is certain sequences, especially if you're epileptic, go in with maybe don't even watch it at all, but go in with, you know, a bit of a knowledge of when to close your eyes, because there's a lot of flashing images, there's a lot of changing colors and different schemes going on as far as where you don't know if you're actually watching somebody in real life or if you're watching their dream or their hallucination. And it all comes together in a way that just kind of hammers home the whole allure of this concept and the whole allure that Skarsgård is falling victim to where he's completely losing grasp of what reality is, because now he has abandoned who he himself is as a person to engage in all this crazy shit. So where a lot of movies I feel would be a little too stylistic with some of the things that they do here, I think what Brandon Cronenberg is able to do in the visual sense actually kind of adds to the concept that he's exploring. Now moving on to the mixed, this movie goes for it. This is a very graphic movie. Just like with Possessor, I believe the film festival circuit got the NC-17 cut, and then they had to obviously do the rated R cut for theaters, but even the rated R cut of this movie that I saw in the theater is pretty fucking out there and pretty gnarly. And I think it's going to turn a lot of people off that otherwise would really enjoy this story and this concept. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that every single solitary bodily fluid is shown on screen in this fucking movie. Over and over again. It goes for it. It does not hold back. I mean, there's some pretty gnarly gore. It's not really a full-on gore fest. It's not, I wouldn't even say it's as gory as Possessor, but there is gore here. There are some kills. There's executions, obviously. There's a lot of sex. And so, for somebody that definitely appreciates when a movie and a filmmaker doesn't give a fuck and just goes for it and just lays it all out, I do think it's a bit too much. Like, I appreciate the fact that it's too much, but at the same time, it's a bit too much. You know, I can get what's going on. If you got Mia Goth reaching around the dude and her fucking arm is going like this for a full 30 seconds, I understand what's going on. You don't have to show the dude's cum drip onto the fucking stones for me to be like, oh, that's what's going on. Gotcha. And I kind of felt the same way about Possessor. Like, Possessor is a really graphic, bloody, brutal movie. And so while I think there's value in that, I think there's something unique about that, and there's probably a lot of people out there that are really appreciative of the fact that Cronenberg goes for it and would not want him to scale it back at all. I do think there's some value in restraint. I do think that there is some power in restraint in storytelling. And so sometimes the power of suggestion is better than showing us flat out what is going on to the full extent. And so while I certainly wasn't nauseous or turned off or offended in any way by all the things that this movie showed, I'm fairly confident that if they scaled some of those things back, even just a little bit, my experience might have been just a little bit better. And moving on to the negatives, it's just not a very rewatchable movie for me. And rewatch value plays very highly into how I rate a movie, because all of my favorite films of all time are all movies that I constantly rewatch and I constantly have the desire to revisit. And while I certainly appreciate a movie that is a powerful one-time experience, and it's not necessarily an experience that I feel the need to go back to, this is that type of film, and it is going to hold it back as far as my ongoing appreciation for Brandon Cronenberg's work. It's 2 films in a row now where I watch it once and I go, okay, I'm good. And the other negative is that I feel like Alexander Skarsgård's wife in the movie kind of left the movie in an awkward way. Like, he presents this scenario to where he has lost his passport and that is the reason why he has to stay and they cannot escape. They can't leave after they're witnessed the horror of this whole law of the clones and they witnessed the first execution. She wants to get the fuck out of town. He's like, I can't, I'm stuck. There's a scenario there where, and maybe it's in the longer cut, where I would have appreciated seeing his wife's reaction to his descent a little more directly. She kind of says something really early on about the way that you looked when that was happening is a little fucked up. I'm out of here. Good luck with your passport. And then we don't really catch up with her again till the end of the film, where I feel like her being around while he's consistently making excuses to go off and continue down this rabbit hole with this group of people would have made the movie just a little bit more interesting. But overall, guys, I would definitely recommend this to you if you were a fan of Possessor, if you're intrigued with the concept, or if you just appreciate Skarsgård and Mia Goth's work, because this is among the best stuff I've seen them do. But it is not going to be a movie for everybody. It's going to extremely turn off some. It's going to be way too trippy and heady and cerebral for some. and others are going to just walk away saying that, I don't know, that was a little pretentious to me. I could see a lot of different reactions to this film. For me, I really dug it. I enjoyed it. I appreciated what they were talking about. I appreciate talking about it with other people that have seen the film, but it's not a movie I'm going to gush over or revisit anytime soon, if ever. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, click over here for the rest of my 2023 new release reviews so far. I'm also going to put my ranking of all of Wes Craven's reviews up here if you're into Cronenberg and the 80s directors. Check that one out. Like and share, and hit the subscribe button so you do not miss anything in the future. I got a review for Fear coming out tomorrow. That's going to be a fun movie to talk about. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.